Welcome to Archery Country Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to Archery Country Podcast. This is your host, Wade, as I'm flying solo today. Coming to you to explore the world of sight tapes and why maybe this should be explored. Why we should take sight tapes to the next level to build your perfect sight tape. Now, I unfortunately don't have anybody to share this knowledge with except for you, the listeners. And I feel like I got a pretty gosh dang good grasp on it. I have shot every single sight that I'm going to talk about in the last 3 or 4 years on different bows, hunting bows, target bows, every bow. There's also, I'm going to talk about some apps that are out there that you can use. But for the main flavor of this podcast, we're going to talk about hunting sights and how to make a perfect sight tape. And the reason that I think more and more people need to explore this and listen to this podcast is because the day and age of being off 2 or 3 yards is not acceptable unless you're shooting 315 plus feet per second. And if you are that kind of archer, you can get away with a lot of things. You may have given up some forgiveness on your bow to shoot that fast or your arrow build, but believe you me, you can get away with 3 or 4 extra yards. Now, for most of us that shoot in that 280 to 295 range, at 50 plus yards, 2 or 3 yards is not going to be a grace that you're given. You cannot be off. And a good rangefinder is going to help. But to get there, you need to have the sight tape that's going to give you confidence. Now, like many of us in the shop, also many of us that are setting up your bows and helping you guys out, 50 yards in the whitetail woods, that's an extremely far shot. Okay, most of us are going to have a pin for that. I like both categories. I like fixed pin sights and I like adjustable single pin, 2-pin, 3-pin on a vertical plane. And when I say that, like Spot Hogg triple stack or BlackGold's dual track, there are multiple pins on a single post. So my clarity is there. The contrast between what I'm aiming at and what I'm aiming with is clear. There's no clutter effect. Now, like our Ascent Verdict Assault, we have 4 pins that come directly in from the side. If you're a right-handed shooter, they're going to come from the right and go left. If you're a left-handed shooter, they're going from left to right in the scope housing. We also are going to explore HHA, the Tetra and the Tetra Rise, dual pin, a 4-pin or a single pin setup on how we adjust that. The triple stack from Spot Hogg along with the Fast Eddie double pin, Fast Eddie Axcel, and Fast Eddie is the base that they're profiled on, but their scope housing and how we're going to sight those in. And also we're going to talk about Axcel, like the Landslide and the AccuTouch sights that are married together. Now, BlackGold and Axcel, when we say vertical plane facing sight tape, it's going to be a strip that runs vertically up and down. Starts usually at 20. It's going to go out to 100. And on Spot Hogg and HHA, we have what we call a wraparound sight tape that'll actually go on the driver wheel. So some differences there, some different ways to sight it in, but we're here for you. So sit back and relax as we kind of explore how to build the perfect sight tape. All right, let's start out with BlackGold because it is the simplest one to do, and here's why. They come in the package, whether you buy an Ascent Verdict Assault 4-pin or the brand new dual track from BlackGold that came out last year, or a Mountain Light 3-pin, or even a Whitetail single pin. They're all driver sights. Everything today is a driver sight. Doesn't matter how many pins it has. We have the capability of moving the whole housing from a base starting point down further in our sight column. BlackGold, at a pro shop, what we can do is we will set up your sight, we will put it on your bow, we will do the first axis, the second axis, the third axis, and then we will go to our chronograph. We'll shoot your bow with your arrow, with the strings, with the monkey tails, the nose button, the D-loop, whatever it is that you have on your bow. We'll shoot it through the chronograph 3 times. We get an average. From that average, we'll go to the sight tape, and we will pick up. Now, that's going to start 244 feet per second, and it's going to go all the way up into about 315. I have the sight tape in front of me here. I'll open the package and tell you. But it's very, very uncommon for us to max out the sight tape, but it is pretty common for us to use the lower number. Of course, if I can get it out. The fastest the sight tapes will go on BlackGold is going to be 324 feet per second. 5 years of working at Archery Country, I have yet to put a 324 foot per second sight tape on. Now, just because we shoot it through the chronograph and we put a sight tape on there doesn't mean, and it may be May when we do that, or December, or last fall, or might be August. That doesn't mean that is your home sight tape. That is a really good start. Now, it may differ from pro shop to pro shop that you go around, but at Archery Country, we'll explain that to you. There is a thing called string stretch ever so slightly. Also, you're going to have elevation changes. You're going to have what we talk about break-in periods on things. But within a couple feet per second, that's going to be your home base. So what I do when we put on a BlackGold sight tape is we'll raise the housing all the way up to our home base, which is 20 yards. Most of the BlackGold sights nowadays have 2 indicator needles. So if you have on the multi-pin system. So like the Ascent Verdict Assault, there's a 4-pin setup. There's 20, 30, 40, and 50. The top indicator is going to be your top pin. Your bottom indicator is going to be your bottom pin. So at home base, it is 20 and it is 50. Now, wherever I drive that housing with my driver's sight, the indicator needles are pointing at a yardage. The cool thing on how that works mathematically is at home base it's 20 and 50, but that does not mean when you bring your top pin down to 60 that your bottom pin is going to be all the way down to 100. The sight tape grows as we go out at further distances because of gravitational pull, because of other forces and drag that are making your arrow slow down at further distances. Now, it is a proven fact, and many of us have experienced this before, is our bow shoots 285 feet per second, and we put on a 285 or 284.5 foot per second sight tape. 20, it's on. 30, it's on. 40, pretty good. 50, all of a sudden I'm having to run I had to shoot like 51 and a half. At 60, I got to run like 62. That is perfectly normal. With a lighter arrow setup, you're going to lose your feet per second faster than you are with a moderate or a heavy arrow setup. So that's why there's 54 sight tapes in that package. You can just take a Sharpie or a very fine tipped pen. When you're shooting your 60 yards or your 70 yards, make a mark. Make sure that you're sighted in there. Hold up another sight tape with your 20 matching, and then your new marks at 60 or 70, and that's your new sight tape. That's how simple BlackGold makes it. I love those guys in that company for what they do because of feet per second. Now, switching to that, let's talk about the other vertical plane for your sight tape, and that's Axcel. Axcel makes some of the most incredible high tolerance sights on the market. In the hunting world, we're talking about the Landslide and also the AccuTouch, which, like it or not, AccuTouch is going to be fading away. Landslide is, you might as well just get it because it's the best of the best on that. They also have a fixed pin sight, but today we're not talking about fixed pins. The Landslide, they give you a plethora of sight tapes for sticky, but they also created metal sight tapes that will not wash away. They're super easy to read. It's a black sight tape with white engravings. So I think it's actually lasered on there, and they're different numbers. Now, in the package that you buy with Axcel, they don't give you all 40 sight tapes. They only give you the most common. And the cool thing about them is they're double-faced on the metal sight tapes. I still run a sticky tape usually unless I can find that perfect mix. But what you're going to do with Axcel is it's going to come with a blank sight tape. If you have a multi-pin setup on this, you're going to just we're strictly going to just use your top pin for your sight tape. Even though you may have a 3-pin and you're using your bottom pin as your further distances, trust me on this. Just use your top pin for the sight tape sight in. It's super easy to do this because your top pin is going to be 20 and we need a home base. So drive your sight all the way up to where you're at, where it stops. Sight in at 20 yards, make a mark. A lot of people ask, well, how do I make marks? Because if I take my pen, I hold my bow and I'm awkward and I kind of look like I'm trying to play a violin and making sight tape marks. This is what I do. I went to Home Depot, and it's actually from my grandpa, his idea back in the day. I wouldn't call him a nerd with a pocket protector, but he had a little itty bitty, I don't even know if it's considered an architectural ruler, but it's about 6 inches long, fits in your pocket, has a little pocket clip. That's the easiest thing. I can put it in my hip quiver, I can put it in my pocket, and when I'm out there, I'll hold that with my indicator needle as level as I can, and I always use a pretty sharp pencil. I don't know, the pen seems to bleed a little bit, and it creates a pretty fat line. So when I'm making my sight tapes, I do it with a pencil. Now, yes, you can smudge it or erase it, but I'm also actually kind of engraving that. I'm pushing pretty hard. But I'll put that little pocket protector ruler. I wish I really knew what it was called. I'm super sorry. I'll send a picture to Desiree so that it's in the comments below or tagged on this. But I hold that ruler there and I make my 20-yard line, just a quick, there's my line, and it's actually dented into the sight tape because it's soft, and there's my 20 mark. Now, I'm not just going to run back to 60 yards and get a chance of losing some arrows. I take my 365 trio, like my 36, it really works good for longer distance in case I do flub up a little bit. But I'm going to go back to 30 and moving my sight tape, to where I'm hitting the general area. I don't really care if I'm accurate at 30, but I need to get further distances. Mathematically speaking, this is where I'm going with this. Working my way back 40, I get to 50. For some reason, I really, really like the number 60 for my hunting bows because it seems to help further that, and it's a yardage, and I'm not bragging or nothing, but I feel like I'm a pretty good shooter. I feel very confident that I can hold less than a 4-inch group at 60 yards. And some days are better than others, but I really strongly think 60 is a really good yardage for me. Find your happy medium. If 50 is your max for comfort, shoot 50. If you can shoot 80 and like there's no wind and Mother Nature has provided us with less humidity and everything's flying good, well then shoot 80. But I just check those later. So I work back to 60, and this is where I camp out. All of this is done after my bow is tuned and my arrows are selected and everything's good. I camp out at 60, and I shoot, and I might be clicking, click, 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 and I'm doing the same thing with my BlackGold just to verify this, but we're talking Axcel right now. 60, 60, 60, 60, 60. Then I will feel confident after probably like 6 or 7 ends of 5 or 8 arrows. So let's just say 30 to 50 arrows at 60. I feel really, really good that that's where my sight tape needs to be set at 60. Then I will make my mark. Now I am not done. I put my bow away. The next day, I'll take a few shots up at 20 just to make sure I'm good, and I go right back to 60. Or the next time I'm going to shoot. And I camp out at 60 for 20, 30, 40 arrows until I can honestly say that is my 60-yard mark. Then I will take, and I have my pencil. If I had to change it a little bit, I can erase or I can make a new line, whatever it may be. Then I'll drive to any of your hardware stores, True Value, your Home Depots, your Menards, wherever you want to go. You can order this on Amazon. It is a micro caliper, okay, for measuring like widths of a pipe, or if you needed a width of a bolt or whatever it's measured. And I like the digital aspect of it because I can lock it There are ones that look like the old school clock. I don't know the wording for that. But I like the digital ones that cost maybe $20. Really nice ones are in the hundreds. But you can use this for a lot of things, especially if you're handy with stuff. I will take my sight off of my bow. You don't have to do this, but it's easier for me to work with it. I'll lay it on my bench, and I will set my top of my caliper at 20, and I'll work down to that 60-yard mark, adjusting that little turret so the jaws open up. And then when I get to the 60, I A, have a digital readout, and B, I can push lock, or you can turn the lock on knob on some of the calipers. Now, I will go over to my sight tapes, rather it be the metal ones, or I can go, to the one of the 40. And I will hold that caliper up, and you can even get a magnifying glass or some cheap readers, from the gas station, like a 1 power, so that you can see exactly where the 2 for 20 and the 6 line up. There's my sight tape. I'm not trying to just fudge numbers. I actually know that's the correct spacing. Then I'll take the sticky part off, or the metal. I'll put that back on. Now, when you put this back on, bring your sight up to 20 or leave it at 60 and lock it. And then put your sight tape to where they line up. I like to go to 20 because that's my home, and usually you can't go up any for more than that. Now on BlackGold and Axcel, you can move your indicators. So if your sight tape doesn't fit perfect where it is, or if you messed up a little bit, just move your indicator so that it's at 20, and then move your other one wherever your bottom pin is going to be. Okay, that's very important that you just listen to that. Your top pin is going to be at 20, home base. Your second indicator is where your bottom pin is. So on the ascent verdict assault, 20, 30, 40, 50. I put my second indicator at 50. On a 3-pin mountain light, my bottom pin is 20, 30, 40. It's at 40. On the triple stack, 20, 30, 40, you actually have 3 indicators, so you'll set those. That's where your bottom pin's going to be. If you have a single pin, put it back up 20 and you're good to go. If you only have one indicator, let's say you buy the line slide and it only has one indicator, not 2, or you took one off for some reason. That indicator, your sight is up at 20, the indicator goes to where your bottom pin is if you have a single indicator. This may be where people get confused. I wish I could show you pictures right now, but the whole sight moves. You're just worried about where your bottom pin is because home base is 20. Now I will go back and sight in my 30-yard pin with home base at 20. Now I'll sight in my 40-yard pin, home base at 20. So I'm moving my individual pins, not the housing. So if you're with me on that, you're good. Okay, so that's your vertical sight tape placards, or forward-facing sight tapes. Now, when we go over to HHA and we go over to Spot Hogg, this is the wraparound, the big dial, the wraparound sight tape profile. They make it pretty dang easy for you to do this, and I'll explain the differences here in just a second. So what we're going to do with, I have 2 sights here in front of me. I have a HHA 4-pin. It's a Tetra Tournament 4-pin. I have a Spot Hogg triple stack. And we're going to pretend that I also have just a single pin HHA, because this is pretty important. Remember back earlier in the podcast, I told you we're going to use our top pin for our sight tape findings. Even though you have 3 other pins or 2 other pins on the triple stack, we're going to use our top pin strictly for finding our sight tape. So we put on the triple stack. We got our first, second, third axis all done. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to 20 yards. I really like to have my sight tape on Spot Hogg. I really like to have my sight all the way to kind of where it kind of maxes out top so that I have max yardage. The cool thing about Spot Hogg is they have what we call a rack stop. So I try to leave just a little bit of room, especially for the faster bows. I like to leave a little bit of room where the rack stop will still connect to that big, huge bar with teeth. And this is pretty important because that's where I can always go back to my home. So let's say I go over the range at 20 yards and I'm shooting and I'm still really high. I need to move the dial so that my sight scope housing goes higher. Well, instead of using my dial because I have my rack stop on, there's 1, 2, 3 different ways that I can move that housing up on Spot Hogg. There is a couple different ways on the HHA. Actually, the HHA, we're going to set it up. You can move the housing without moving the dial. So find your home. On HHA, you can actually turn this thing all the way till it stops. That's where I want my 20, okay? So my dial's all the way up. On the Spot Hogg, my dial's all the way up to where the rack stop stops. At 20 yards, I like to have my pin on the upper half, not all the way to the third, but the upper half. And on the triple stack, I like to have it maxed out all the way up for the pin. Now, if I'm shooting at 20 yards and I need to move my housing up or down, I do that so that I can kind of go wherever I need to, and I'll fine tune. If it's just a sliver, if I'm low at 20 and I need to go back down just like a 16th of an inch or not even that, then I will move my pin. But I'll get my home as close to home as I can get at 20 yards. All right. Hopefully I didn't lose you guys on that. So now I have 20 yards. I can drill attack at 20, 9 times out of 10, super, super confident with it. On both of these sights, there's what we call the setup sight tape. It's going to start at 0 or setup 0, home mark. Your top indicator is where that sticker needs to start. So on the HHA, it's a setup tape. It's black and red. It's a white tape with black and red markings. My indicator is pointing at 0, and I'm sighted in at 20. Now, don't get lost, okay? It's at 0. Now, I'm using my top pin only. Work my way back to 30, make sure I'm hitting target, work my way back to 40, work my way back to 50, work my way back to 60 on my target. The whole time I'm moving the dial down. So I started at 0. At 30, it may end up being at like 6. At 40, it may be 17. At 50, it may be 25. And at 60, my top pin is probably, let's just say, for example, it's at 40. Okay. I've moved my housing at 60 yards to where on my setup tape, my indicator points at 40. Again, shot 40 arrows at 60 that day. I got a pretty good idea. Take a picture with my phone. Boom. Go into edit that picture. I'll go to the marker and I'll write on there 60 yards. I save that picture in my photo album and I have it. Day 2, day 4, day 7, whatever the next day is that you can get out and shoot. Maybe take a couple warm-up shots at 20, but I'm going to go right back to 60 yards. That being said, another 20 to 40 arrows at 60 until I know, yes, this is absolutely perfect. Okay, there are some listeners out there that may be like, well, what happens if I'm low at 60? Drive your housing down. Always follow your arrows. If you're low at 60, go down. If you're high at 60, go move your sight housing up. Make your pin, chase your arrows. Left and rights, I hope that you guys understand that you take care of that usually at 20, and that's why I've repeatedly said your first, second, and your third access. Your second, very, very important for this, because if you're sighted in at 20 and all of a sudden at 60, you're 4 inches to the left, probably, if you haven't done a walk-back tune, might look that area, but your second axis might be off to where you're actually, your sight is moving right or left the further you go out. That's why it's very important. If you don't have the tools or the levels to do it, you can come in, pay a small fee, and we'll do your first, second, third access. Unless if you bought the stuff from us, which I hope you have, we'll do it for free. And you can always check this because some stuff happens. Sometimes, things get bumped. Takes us probably 5-10 minutes on a busy day. So no worries on that. Back to it. So now I have my 60-yard mark. My indicator needle is pointing at number 40. And my HHA booklet of sight tapes, they are numbered 1 through whatever it may be, 100. Okay. I look and I find sight tape number 40. Have sight tape number 40. I cut it out. I lay it on a nice little work area that's clean. I'm going to take my scope, my sight and my scope. I'm going to take and loosen the brake. I'm going to drive this all the way back up to my setup 0, my home base. Maxed all the way up. I'm going to take a fine-tuned or super small knife or whatever I need to do to get the sight tape off, the setup tape off. Well, I've locked my sight, so my indicator needle is at 20 yards. I take my new sight tape number 40, and I'll start the number 20-yard mark, exactly where that indicator needle is, and I'll neatly place that sight tape and wrap it around that drive wheel all the way down, and then finish it off. Now I know, excuse me, I just messed up. Instead of starting it at 20, I'm going to start the sight tape. I need to go back and edit this because I just messed up big time. I need to set my sight tape on the HHA Tetra on this 4-pin, 20, 30, 40, 50. I need to start it at 50 because I'm going to sight in my other pins at that yardage. My 20, I'm at 20, yes, but that sight tape is going to start at 50 because my bottom pin is 50 yards. You with me on that? I'll repeat it again. So on this 4-pin, I have 20, 30, 40, 50. On the home base, my top pin right now is at 20 yards. If I shot my bow in the yardage at 20, it's hitting. I'm going to start my sight tape at 50 for the bottom pin because I already have fixed pins to get me to 50. Then when I turn my housing, rather be to 55 or 60, 67, 72, I'm using my bottom pin. Okay. On the spot hog, actually, we'll go back to HHA. Let's say I have a single pin. That is where I will start the sight tape at 20 yards because I only have one pin all the time. No matter where I move the housing, it's going to be pointing at the yardage that I choose or wherever I stop it at. So on a single pin, you start the sight tape at 20. On a multi-pin, whatever your bottom pin yardage is, that's where you start your sight tape. Hopefully I didn't lose everybody on that. You can call me or email me if I did. Now the triple stack, they have 3 indicators. That is going to be, I'm going to start my top pin, top indicator, top pin at 20. Then I'm going to put my sight tape and roll it around nice and clean on there. And then I move my indicators to whatever my second pin is. I like to go in increments of 10. On the triple stack, I can micro adjust my pins up and down. So I'll set my top pin at 20, my second pin at 30, and my bottom pin at 40. On my indicators, the little purple indicators, I set my top indicator at 20. I'll set my second indicator to match my second pin at 30, and I'll match my fourth pin, fourth indicator at 40. Third pin, third indicator, 40 yards. Let's say you get a spot hog double pin, 2 indicators, 20, and whatever you set your second pin at, 30. I just like to go on that. Some guys can get away with like a 35 or a 40-yard pin. By all means, you're covering more yardage with just 2 pins. Why not do it? BlackGold, we'll go back to it. They have a dual track, which is probably next to the Ascent Verdict Assault, one of our #1 sellers, because you instantaneously have a 20-yard pin and a 35 or a 20 and a 40. It's very, very rare that we can have, you have to be shooting some pretty good poundage and a moderate to light arrow setup to get 20 and 40 on their spacing, but you can micro adjust that pin and have it wherever you want. All right. Now you can, if you would like to, we've had some guys that say, well, I'm always off a yard or 2 at my further distances with this 20 and 60 yard wrap-up tape. I understand that. You can take your setup tape, work your way back to 60. You have the mark. On HHA, they have a really fine point indicator needle, so you can really, really figure out where it is. But I always do this. Take a picture with my phone, and exactly where the 60-yard mark is on that tape, I'll take a picture with my phone, and then I can blow it up. That's my magnifying glass. I'll take the sight tape off, the setup sight tape. I'll take it off of the wheel, drive wheel, and I'll lay it on, and I'll stick it right down to my workbench. Go grab my caliper out of my case, which is in my toolbox, and I'll measure that 20-yard home, which is 0, and my 60-yard home, which on the HHA was 40, but it might be, ever so slightly, wherever my mark ends up, be 41 or 41 and a half or 42, and those are just numbers, but then I'll lock my caliper. Now, the sight tapes that come from HHA and Spot Hogg are on a flat surface already. They're not on a dial. And then I can match it up. Even though it gives me a reference that says, yep, you should use sight tape 40. I'm going to make dang sure that sight tape and that caliper match up wherever it's going to be, whether it be 41 or 42 or 38 or 39, 40 might be perfect. Same thing with Spot Hogg. If you want to be precise, again, find your happy medium for your furthest yardage, wherever you're comfortable, wherever you think you can hold your best group at the furthest distance. If it's 40, so be it. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, I don't need a sight tape that goes 100 yards because I'm never going to shoot over 40. That's okay. You're probably not buying a driver sight unless you just want to be the cool kid on the block. But it's fun. And it's also very challenging, and it makes you a better archer if you can at least practice further than what your pins may be. Single pin sights were a huge fad 8 years ago because it created less clutter. You could see your animal, your desired target. A lot of target archers use a single pin setup in the 3D world or a dot, so it's only one sight point reference. It's only one pin reference. You don't have to worry about multiple. But in a hunting world, things can happen so fast that, I've been caught before. I have a single pin sight, and I did the magical trick, and I set it at 30 because at 20 I'm only 1.5 inches high, and at 40 I'm 2 inches low. Whitetail accurate, I guess you could say. But still, a single pin, you may get stuck. You maybe not. Turkey hunters usually can get away with single pin because you're trying to get them in. For your thick timber, I have a 20-yard food plot or wherever I'm hunting, and that's where it is. You're probably okay. But if you get an opportunity where you're hunting a field edge and you need more than one pin simultaneously, that's where you're going to have a dual pin or a triple stack or a 4-pin. Or just a fixed pin, whatever it may be. But again, talking about sight tape, so why would you have sight tape on a fixed pin? You know what I mean? So that being said, we talked about the caliper. Now we're kind of talking about why I would shoot a driver sight. For that simplicity that we just talked about. We've talked about it on numerous podcasts, or we talk about it every sales pitch, and we're talking about sights and why we use what we use. Having that capability to know, like a 4-pin setup or a 5-pin setup on a driver sight, if you go that many, I have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. On our 4 pins, you got 20, 30, 40, 50. On a triple stack, you have 20, 30, 40. On a dual pin, you have 20 and 35 or 20 and 40. So instant gratification on wherever I need my yardage. All of these have very good braking systems. BlackGold has a little bitty lever right in front of the sight tape indicator that will lock it. HHA is on the side of the sight wheel, the driver wheel. You can lock it. Spot Hogg is on the bottom of the wheel, bottom of the mechanism where you can lock it. I like to, when I get set in a tree stand, if you're going to lock it, that's just one more move. But when I get up there, it's like, okay. So I get up in the tree stand, hang my bow, I take my quiver off, hang my quiver, I get the arrow, kiss the broadhead for good luck, knock that arrow, everything is prestige. I have my home wherever my home is, and I'll reach up and I'll unlock that brake so that I can move my sight tape freely, the wheel, anytime that I need to. Very rarely do I have it locked, but you can lock it if you need to. So again, that we're just talking about couple different sight setups that you have, and there's so many options. You can customize them. You can get smaller pins. You can get pin colors. The last 3 or 4 years, there's sight companies out there, the supply and demand issues. They've actually gone away from customizing. You can order them, but now they've opened the channels back up to where we can. Pin coloration. That's another big thing that comes up. Spot Hogg, they give you, like, if you open up the triple stack sight, they're going to be green, yellow, green. HHA, they have green, red, green, red. Green and red on that. BlackGold, they change up their colors on their dual track, is going to be green and red right out of the box. You can micro adjust the second pin up or down. On the triple stack, you can micro adjust each individual pin up or down. HHA, it's not a micro adjust, but you can move the pins up or down ever so slightly. And then you can also do pin size, like the Ascent Verdict Assault, the one that we made that's kind of like the Pro Shop one. The bottom pin is 10 thousandths, and that's green because the further you are away, you want a smaller pin profile to not cover up your X or your deer or turkey or whatever it may be. And again, you can customize those. BlackGold is one of the simplest, unless you have a Pro sight that has micro adjustable pins. That we have to send to BlackGold, or we have to order you a custom. But if it's just the standard Ascent Verdict Assault, we can change the pins for you. So you could have all green. You can have green, red, green, red. You can have green if you like. It seems to be in the world of archery, yellow is a sight. It's a color for the fiber optic that most archers have the hardest time seeing. It fades a little bit. I can shoot a yellow pin, but I don't like to. I customize my sights. Usually they're all green. And I know a lot of people are like, well, oh my gosh, you're going to not be able to, figure out when you're in the heat of the moment and there's an animal and you need to go to the 40-yard pin. It's one of the green pins. Well, I've been doing it long enough that I can go 20, 30, 40, 50. It's just like, boom, it's right there in my mind. Now, one sight that we have not talked about, and I left it for the end of this, is our new option archery canyon pounder. This is a sight that is completely different than any of the 4 or 5 sights that I've talked about in the last 38 minutes. Okay. The canyon pounder, Mr. Dan Evans, option archery's been around for a while. They used to have a big oval, kind of look like a football field stadium or a hockey rink oval. They've gone away from that and they went back to a circular on the canyon pounder. This is a multi-pin, single-pin driver sight because the hood opens up 90 degrees, right or left-handed, whatever it may be, so you can instantly have a single pin, or you can close the hood and have a 5-pin. You can customize it to a 3-pin if you wanted, 4-pin if you wanted. It's wherever you're going to be. Now, it takes a little bit. You can watch some YouTube videos or talk to us one at the shop on how you're going to do this sight. This is, again, the only sight of the whole 6 that we talked about where you're going to do things a little bit different. But it is super, super easy. You're going to get this sight. It has 5 pins when the hood's closed. It has a 20-yard fixed pin, a 30-yard fixed pin. The 40 is the movable. 50 is fixed. 60 is fixed. So 4 fixed pins, then 1 mover. Now the mover, back in the day, the mover moved. But now we're moving the whole housing. So we're going to open up the hood. Your third pin, the mover pin. Again, I hate to say that word mover pin because you're not actually moving the pin. It's the housing. The third pin is how we're going to get our sight tape. We're gonna max that sight all the way up to where it's at 0. It's already a setup tape is already installed. The placard, it's big. It's very, very vibrant. You can see it very, very well. And I'm going to sight in that single pin at 20 by moving my housing bracket up or down, not the flywheel. It's a big turret up on top. It's like it would be closer to Axcel's Axcel landslide. It's got a turret up on top. It's the only one of these sights where the drive wheel isn't on the side. It's up on top. So it's like a target sight. Back to home. I got my 20 and my sight tape indicator, and my sight tape is at 0. I'm only using my single pin. Sighted in at 20. I'm going to walk back, shoot it at 30, just make sure, and I'm moving my whole housing with that turret just a little bit at 30 to make sure I hit. At 40, I'm moving it a little bit. At 50, I'm moving it. Now I'm at 50. They give you the option to either go 50 yards or 80 yards. We're home at 50. We feel really comfortable. We're Midwest shooters. If you want 80, I think the further you are, the little bit more accurate your sight tape is. But at 50. Now I'm only using my single pin. I haven't closed the housing. I've moved the turret, the indicator needle. I am blasting the center of the target at 50 yards with my single pin. Very confident. My needle is pointing at 30. Okay. I'm shooting a pretty fast bow. The number on the sight tape is 30. That's not the yardage. That's just the number that it's pointing at. Now I go to my option archery. I open up the whole booklet, and they give you 2 sight tapes for that number. One sight tape is going to be for your single pin. The other sight tape is going to be for your bottom pin of your fixed. That's going to be on the right side if you're a right-handed shooter. On the left side of the sight is going to be your single pin sight tape. On the right side is going to be your bottom pin of your multi-pin. You with me so far? So my bottom pin is going to be my, again, remember, I have 20 for my top pin, 30 for my second. My mover is at 40. My second or fourth pin is at 50, and the bottom pin's at 60. So I'm going to have that sight tape on the right-hand side. That's going to start at 60. Now on the single pin side of things, the sight tape is going to be a complete sight tape, and the indicator is going to start at 20. Now this is where it gets tricky. Because that's my 40-yard pin, and I know that my sight tape is correct, I will move the whole housing down to 40. And I'll go back and I'll sight in my fixed pin for 20. Move it up or down. I'm going to sight in my second pin for 30, moving it up or down. This is where the housing is closed. I know because my middle pin is the mover or the single. That's already perfect at 40. Then I'm going to go down to my fourth pin. That is 50. And I'm going to go down to my fifth pin, and that is 60. And I'm moving those 4. The 20, the 30, the 50, and the 60. My sight tape on the right side is started at 60. My sight tape on the left side is 20 through 100, and it's even more than that, plus 100. Now, when I'm hunting, if I'm going to use all the fixed pins, that scope is closed, and my sight tape on the left side is at 40 because that's where the pin is, and on the other side it's at 60, but I know I'm at home, so my top pin is at 20. The Canyon Pounder, honestly, we're going to send you a QR code, or you're going to scan it in the option, and you're going to watch the YouTube video that Option Archery has put out. Also, if you guys are avid podcasters or YouTubers, Dan Evans with Dan Evans and Dan Staten, they got together. They have a pretty cool YouTube video about the Canyon Pounder. It's when you're buying the Canyon Pounder from Option Archery, you're actually buying 2 sights in one. Now you say, well, that's a lot of money. Yeah, it is. But if you wanted to buy 2 of phenomenal sights, a single pin and a multi-pin, you're going to be into the $700-800 range. Here you can buy one sight that does it all. That's a site to definitely look at if you're in the market. This time of year, people are getting restrings. They're upgrading their bows. They maybe don't need to upgrade their bow. They're just getting restrings and a new rest. And, hey, it's time to get a new sight. Now we have something for all of you. Now, where does this come into play? Why would I need a new sight? Again, we not separating, not being biased, not leaving anybody out in the open. There's situations where you want to have a driver. Practice is probably the most common. But also for clutter, I like to be able to have a 60-yard pin. But I don't want to have 5 pins in my sight because it's too congested. Some people can get away with it. I just personally can't. I target background, and I may not shoot target as much as I once did, but I still like to have just a reference that's easy for me to see. I like to see what I'm aiming at and not have a bunch of stuff covering it up. Because the way that it works with your self-conscious and your conscious is you can only really educate yourself as good as we think we are. You can only concentrate on one thing. Is it release execution? Is it the target? Or is it the pin? Very, very, very few people concentrate on the pin. It's just a stationary object in the way of the target, and that's giving me a point of aim reference. In especially a hunting situation, I am buried on that tuck of hair or that little bit of fluff, that's an odd mark, or just a generalization of that's the second rib back. That's where I want that broadhead to hit. The pin just happens to be in the way. Okay. Now, 3D course, same thing. I found an arrow that somebody had already put in there, and one of my buddies has shot a perfect 12, and I'm aiming at that arrow. I'm looking at the arrow. The pin or the dot is just in the way. A turkey setup right close. I'm looking at the beard if he's facing me, or above that little buff on the feather, or above the top of the leg. I'm just aiming at that spot, and the pin gets in the way. The only time that I concentrate on the pin is when I'm shooting indoor archery at 20 yards. Then I concentrate on my dot, and it just gets in the way of the target. I'm not actually concentrating on the X, but that's where we shoot a big profile dot or a bigger pin. So there's different ways to look at it. A human, very few humans have the ability to do both. Even if you shoot with both eyes open, it's hard to concentrate and have a crystal clear pin and a crystal clear target. You can get very, very close, but it's hard to do it. I got a podcast coming up with somebody that we're going to talk about aiming a little bit more in detail. That's something that you're going to want to subscribe to this so you get the notification, ring that bell, whether it be on YouTube or any of our big home bases for these podcasts, because the next podcast, that gentleman that we're going to be talking to, he's going to narrow things down a little bit. So I hope this helped you out on building the perfect sight tape. At all of our pro shops, we're here to help you, and we thoroughly enjoy this. We've done this with 2 or 3 bows personally every year for the last 20 plus years. Up in Brainerd, those guys are testing immensely. Waite Park, there's a plethora of guys there that have done this. Very few of us are shooting a fixed pin sight. It may be a fixed pin, but it's also a driver, so we have to make a sight tape. Now, contrary to belief, if I did my sight tape in May, am I set and good to go in September? In a roundabout way, if you buy a BlackGold and nothing changed on your bow, you're pretty set. Spot Hogg, you're pretty set. HHA, you're pretty set. You're always going to want to check it, especially right before. Now, once you've done a sight tape, 1 or 2 times, you get pretty good. It's not very hard to switch it out. If you happen to go out and you're pinwheeling at 20 yards and you get back to 60, 70 yards on practice, let's say I got an antelope hunt in Douglas, Wyoming, and there may be a shot that I have to take past there. And I sight in at 60 and I know, oh my gosh, just a little bit low. I got to go to 63 yards to be accurate. No problem. Just go home, or if you want to do it where you're shooting, if you're at home, go back into your shop and then just make a mark and put a new sight tape on where 20 is your home and 63 is your new 60. That's why there's a plethora of sight tapes. You can buy Spot Hogg sight tapes. I believe they're $12.99. You can buy HHA sight tapes that go out further than 100. There's Tetra models and then there's Optimizer model. You can buy those. They're $15.99. You can get a booklet of BlackGold sight tapes from us. They're $15.99. Don't quote me on these prices. It's just a generalization. Axcel, we can order those and get them for you. The sticky sides. We also can order the specific metal placard sight tape. So if you are on your sticky tape, you're not a 22, you're a 23 or a 24, and you didn't get that metal sight tape in your package, which they're not going to send all of them. They're going to send about a third of them. We can order that. We do carry some on hand, especially during busy season, but it is something that you're going to want to, and you guys can order this stuff by yourself, but we do offer it here at the Pro Shop, especially for the sites we're talking about. Canyon Pounder, you can get those option. They do give you, all of these sites come with a sight tape booklet. So don't feel like you're out in the open. Now, there are some listeners, avid archers, that are going to use programs like Archer's Advantage. Back in the day here in Rogers, and I think Waite Park and Brainerd did it as well, we used to have a program on a computer we could print out sight tapes. The companies have gotten so good that they do it for us, so we've gotten away from that. You can download the app Archer's Advantage. You can pay for their membership for the year, and you can print out sight tapes. Archer's Mark, I've used that a lot. Again, it's an app where you can make a sight tape. It gives you your marks. It's strictly kind of made for the target setup because you're entering the sight on the turret and the worm drive. There's different, gear ratios and different ways that it moves. So it gets a little bit more complicated. You need to have like your sight, your peep to pin, your peep to arrow, your feet per second. You got to have a lot more information if you want to make those precise sight tapes. I am here to tell you, in as many years as I've been doing this, I have ordered some custom sight tapes from like Gunstar, Gunstar, and that. They're just super, super accurate. They're very fine printed and they're nice. But honestly, all of these hunting sights, they come with what you need. You don't need anything more than that. You may be shooting 295 feet per second and BlackGold 295 foot per second sight tape. It works phenomenally out to 50, but my 60, 70, and 80 yards are off. Then I'm just going to go down to a lower sight tape to where those marks are on. Because my 20 to 50, honestly, if you're off just a quarter yard, half yard, you're okay. You know what I mean? There's not very many archers that can hit a pop can lid at 50 yards and know the difference between a quarter yard. So what I'm saying is you're getting everything that you need, or we can get you extra sight tapes for that. So just a little recap. Sorry by myself today. A little recap on what we're talking about. Our driver sights from archery country. The mains that we carry, BlackGold's going to be our number one. The Ascent Verdict Assault, the Dual Track, and the Mountain Light 3-pin. All those sights can be customized. They're super easy. You can we'll sight you in at 20 and we can get you a sight tape that's going to get you within a 5-inch dot at 60, 70, 80 yards. Pretty dang confident in that. Again, we look at the arrow build. Keith and I actually figured this out through trial and error the last couple of years. Is when we go to our light arrow setup, sometimes those sight tapes are skewed just a little bit, where if you're shooting a moderately heavy, like a 500 to a 550 grain arrow setup, usually those sight tapes are pretty smack dab on. Because again, you're losing less feet per second the further you go out. With a heavy arrow, you're just shooting a lot slower sight tape with a heavy arrow. So the BlackGold, we also carry the HHA. We have a 4-pin that's called a Tetra Tournament 4-pin. Super robust, super nice, micro adjust on your windage. Your elevation, we can do that too. And then again, Spot Hogg we can get the single pin. We have a few of them, the double pin. And these are all on a Fast Eddy Axcel base. You can get just a Fast Eddy. That's going to be your bracket that's fixed. It's not a dovetail where you can move it in and out. The triple stack is our number one seller from Spot Hogg. It's a very robust sight. It's a 3-pin inline. It's not one pin, but it's in one pin plane. So you're looking at one post with 3 pins on it, more or less. And then the Canyon Pounder, that's new to us this year. It's actually new to everybody this year from Option Archery. That is a sight that I'm running on my Matthews this year. I really, really like it. For turkey hunting, I set it up to I just use a single pin. You can have 2 different lights, so you can light up all your pins, or you can light up just your single pin. I can close the housing, and then boom, I have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and when I'm sitting in the tree stand for whitetails. Not going to say that I've never took a shot over 60 on an animal, but it's very, very rare that I'm going to have to. And that brings up a good point. Why not just have a fixed pin and then run with it if you're not going to shoot over 60? Because it might be an opportunity, and then also practice. I like to have a couple. I've ran a 2-pin, the BlackGold dual track last year. I liked it. I like to have 3 pins on my Axcel landslide, 20, 30, 40, because if there's an animal that's out at 47 or 52 or 62, I usually have time to range it. 62 and a half, I can reach down and move that. So my bottom indicator, my bottom pin's at 62 and a half, and I have time to do that. If they're within 30, unless you're really, really good and that deer is deaf and blind, you could get away with some movement and moving that all there, but why chance it? Have a pin, at least have a dual pin setup. Single pin, guys, not leaving you out, just talking to you. I hope you enjoyed this. I know that it got a little bit congested in the middle there. It might have confused a couple of you, but again, call us, talk to us, stop in the archery shop. Thanks again for listening, guys. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to Archery Country Podcast.